There's something that every survival plan leaves out, every prepper form ignores, and every post-apocalyptic movie gets completely wrong. When humans stop maintaining a city, humans are not the only species that notices. Within hours of the grid going dark and the streets going quiet, a shift begins that most people won't register until it's already happened, because they're too busy worrying about food, water, and other humans to look down at their feet or up at the roofline. But if they did look, they'd see something that would change how they think about their environment completely. The city doesn't become empty when people leave. It becomes full. Fuller than before, because every species that spent the last century being suppressed, poisoned, and pushed to the margins by human infrastructure is suddenly operating in a world where the traps aren't being reset, the poison isn't being replenished, the garbage trucks aren't running, and every dumpster, sewer line, and abandoned kitchen has become an all-you-can-eat buffet with no closing time. Within 30 days, your city will belong to 4 animals that were already there waiting, and understanding what each one does, where each one goes, and how each one affects your survival isn't a nature documentary exercise. It's a tactical necessity that determines whether you get sick, get bitten, get fed, or get overwhelmed by a problem you didn't see coming. Animal number 1, rats. And they're going to multiply at a speed that will make you reconsider everything you thought you understood about urban wildlife. A single pair of rats, under ideal conditions, can produce up to 15,000 descendants in a single year. Under normal city conditions, that number is held in check by poison programs, sanitation services, predator pressure, and the fact that garbage collection limits their food supply. Remove all 4 controls simultaneously, which is exactly what a collapse does. And the rat population doesn't just increase, it detonates. Within the first week, rats that were living in sewers and walls move into the open as they discover human activity has stopped. By week 2, the explosion of available food from unrefrigerated kitchens, open dumpsters, and abandoned restaurants triggers accelerated breeding. By week 3, you're seeing rats in daylight in groups, moving through streets with a confidence they never displayed when human foot traffic kept them underground. By day 30, the population in your area may have doubled or tripled, and it's still accelerating. Why this matters is less about the rats themselves and more about what they carry. Rats are mobile disease platforms hosting fleas that transmit plague, bacteria causing leptospirosis through contaminated water, hantavirus in their droppings, salmonella on every surface they touch, and rat bite fever through direct contact. In a world with no hospitals and limited antibiotics, any one of these can kill you, and the rats are spreading them across your water collection points, food storage areas, sleeping quarters, and every surface they cross. But here's what actually changes your behavior. Rats will find your food before other humans do. They smell food through walls, chew through wood, plastic, and soft metals, and squeeze through any gap wider than a quarter. If you're storing food in anything less than sealed metal or thick glass, the rats will contaminate it and leave behind droppings that make whatever's left potentially lethal. Your food storage strategy isn't just about hiding supplies from people. It's about sealing them against an enemy that operates 24 hours a day, fits through holes you can't see, and multiplies faster than you can kill them. Metal containers with tight lids, food hung from ceilings on wire rats can't climb, and aggressive sanitation around your shelter, these are frontline defense against the most persistent biological threat in your environment. Animal number 2, birds. Specifically pigeons, crows, and whatever species of urban raptor has been quietly nesting on your city's rooftops. And this group is your single greatest ally, if you're smart enough to pay attention. Birds are the intelligence network that most survivors never think to use, and the information they provide for free is worth more than anything you could gather scouting on foot. Pigeons and crows both react to human presence with predictable behavioral changes visible from hundreds of yards away. A flock of pigeons suddenly taking flight tells you something disturbed them, and in an empty city, that disturbance is almost always a moving person. If you're observing from a distance and see pigeons lift off a building 2 blocks away, someone is over there, and you know it without exposing yourself. Crows are even more useful because they don't just react. They remember, vocalize, and communicate. A crow that identifies a threat produces a specific alarm call that other crows respond to and repeat, creating a cascading alert that can track a moving threat across several blocks. If you learn to distinguish normal crow calls from alarm vocalizations, you've got a citywide warning network operating in every direction that never sleeps. Beyond intelligence, birds serve as a food source most urban survivors overlook because eating a pigeon feels strange. Get over it. A single pigeon provides roughly 200 calories of lean protein, and urban pigeons are enormous in number, slow to flee from humans they've cohabited with for generations, and catchable with simple traps. A box, propped with a stick, a loop snare, or even by hand with patience. They cluster in predictable locations, under bridges, on rooftops, in parking garages, meaning once you identify a roosting site, you have a renewable food source that replenishes continuously. Crows are harder to catch but serve a different function. They cache food, hiding scraps in crevices across a wide area. If you observe where crows are caching, you get a rough map of where food scraps exist, which points toward human-scale resources nearby. Waste piles, open containers, abandoned kitchens. You're not eating the crow's stash. You're reading its behavior like a map. Animal number 3, dogs. And this one is complicated because dogs exist on a spectrum that ranges from the most valuable survival companion you'll ever have to a legitimate pack-hunting threat, depending almost entirely on how quickly they transition from domestic pet to feral animal, which happens much faster than people want to believe. In the first week, the dogs you encounter are mostly still pets, disoriented, hungry, looking for owners, and generally approachable with slow movement and food. These dogs are an extraordinary resource because a bonded dog provides perimeter security no human watch system can match, detecting threats through hearing and smell at ranges physically impossible for us. A dog near your shelter entrance alerts to approaching strangers long before any tripwire or CAN system, and the psychological deterrent of a barking dog is significant enough that opportunistic threats will simply choose an easier target. By week 2 and 3, the equation shifts. Unbonded dogs form packs, and pack behavior emerges with startling speed because the social programming is hardwired. Domestication suppressed it. It didn't delete it. A pack of 5 to 10 feral dogs is a genuine threat to a solo human, especially at night, especially if you're carrying food, and especially if the pack has already made a successful group hunt that taught them coordinated aggression produces results. By day 30, feral packs are established, territorial, and increasingly bold. They operate primarily at dawn and dusk, avoid large human groups, but approach individuals, and are drawn to the same food smells you're trying to suppress. Solo movement during low-light hours becomes measurably more dangerous. Food carried outside needs scent sealing, and your route planning needs to account for dog pack territories the same way it accounts for hostile human zones. The strategic play is simple. Secure 1 or 2 dogs early, before the feral transition, bond them with food and shelter, and you gain a detection system that would cost thousands in electronic equipment, running on table scraps and companionship. Wait too long, and those same animals become a hazard complicating every outdoor movement. Animal number 4, the dangerous one. And it's not what you're expecting. not wolves, bears, or mountain lions. The most dangerous animal that takes over a city after a collapse is the mosquito. And I can hear you rolling your eyes, which is exactly the reaction that gets people killed. Here's what happens. Every storm drain no longer being flushed becomes a breeding pool. Every abandoned pool no longer being chlorinated becomes a nursery producing thousands of adults per week. Every toilet, open container, gutter, tire, bucket, and piece of trash holding an ounce of rainwater becomes a breeding site. And in a city of 1 million people, there are millions of these micro-habitats that were being managed by systems that no longer exist. The mosquito population doesn't just increase, it becomes apocalyptic, reaching densities most Americans have never experienced. Mosquitoes carry West Nile virus, Eastern equine encephalitis, Zika, dengue, and in warmer regions, malaria, diseases suppressed by vector control programs and public health infrastructure that vanished when the grid died. In a pre-collapse city, a mosquito bite is an annoyance. In a post-collapse city with no hospitals, no antivirals, no IV fluids for dengue dehydration, and no way to reduce encephalitis brain swelling, a mosquito bite is a potential death sentence delivered by an animal weighing less than a grain of rice. The practical impact touches nearly every aspect of your routine. Sleeping without protection during warm months is genuinely one of the most dangerous things you can do, because the hours between dusk and dawn when you're stationary and radiating the CO2 and body heat mosquitoes track are your highest exposure window. A mosquito net improvised from sheer curtain fabric, window screen material, or any fine mesh draped over your sleeping position goes from camping luxury to medical necessity on par with clean water. Covering skin during peak hours, burning smoky materials near shelter entrances, eliminating every standing water source within 200 feet of where you sleep. These aren't comfort measures, they're disease prevention that directly affects whether you're functional next week or bedridden with an untreatable fever. And here's the detail connecting the mosquito threat back to the rat threat. Rats that die don't disappear. Their bodies decompose. Fleas and parasites leave the cooling corpse seeking new warm-blooded hosts. And in a city with an exploding mosquito population feeding on those same remains and then feeding on you, disease transmission pathways multiply in ways that would give an epidemiologist nightmares. The rat problem feeds the mosquito problem feeds the human disease problem, and the cycle accelerates in the absence of sanitation infrastructure that was quietly preventing it every day of your pre-collapse life. Here's what this all means together. Within 30 days, the animal landscape of your city has fundamentally reorganized around your absence as the dominant species. Rats have moved into your food supply, spreading disease across every surface. Birds have become an ambient intelligence network, broadcasting threat information if you know how to read it. Dogs have split into bonded companions, worth their weight in gold, and feral packs, adding predator avoidance to every movement plan. And mosquitoes have turned warm nights into a vector-borne disease minefield that kills quietly and indiscriminately. The survivors who understand this don't just avoid the threats, they integrate the ecosystem into their strategy. They seal food against rats in metal containers and hang supplies out of reach. They watch pigeons and listen to crows, letting birds reveal where humans are moving. They bond dogs early as a biological security system running on scraps. And they treat mosquito protection with the same seriousness as water purification, because the invisible threat buzzing around their head at night is statistically more likely to kill them than the armed stranger 3 blocks away. The city, after a collapse, isn't empty. It's teeming with a different set of residents, and your survival depends on understanding who they are, what they want, and how to use them or avoid them. The rats want your food. Seal it. The birds want nothing from you. Listen to them. The dogs want a pack. Become one or avoid theirs. The mosquitoes want your blood. Deny them or pay with your life. 4 animals, 4 relationships. And the person who manages all 4 has a survival advantage that no amount of stored food or ammunition can replicate. Pay attention to the animals. They're already paying attention to you.